Tikiuosi, kad renginiui prasidedant girdėsiu, ką pranešėjai kalba. Dabar matau, kad uždėta pauzė.
Sveiki visi, ačiū, kad prisijungėt prie mūsų virtualaus renginio apie atsinaujinančius išteklius bendruomenę.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining us to this renewable energy event organized by the Public Education Center, Community Education Center. My name is Vaida Pilibaitytė. I'm glad that we're meeting today on the International Earth Day and we can talk about possible changes in our city environment. We know that urban environment is growing and this also increases waste and this decreases the health, and because of climate change we also are influenced by these general changes of environment. So it is very important for us to maintain our public square sustainable and suitable to live in. So far, we are planning that in the future, up to 90% of energy will be from the renewable sources. We'll see. And now we will talk about renewable energy in our region of Scandinavia and Northern Europe and Baltics. I will introduce first presenter Martynas Nagevičius, energy expert, president of Lithuanian Renewable Energy Confederation, director of Lithuanian Association of Energy Consultants, public figure, politician, and we have a lecturer from Finland. Our conference will last for up to 2 hours, and we shall ask our presenters to present the situation in Lithuania and in Finland during the first part of our meeting, and the second part will be discussion. The discussion will be in English, but with the help of an interpreter, it will be translated into Lithuanian. And also feel free to ask questions, write down them in their computers, and we will pass them to the lecturers. And now I will give floor to Martynas Nagevičius, and he will give his presentation about the panels. Thank you, Vaida, for your presentation, for introduction. And of course, it would take much more to talk about the renewable energy than just half an hour, but I will try to, and I will also supplement my presentation with an official product, with services, and these services usually include measures to help businesses in this renewable energy. So at the end of my presentation, I would like to provide you with free of charge service so with the help of Antakalnis Education Center and how to include the community. So of course, here you can see my contacts. So to answer the question, what is needed to strengthen the renewable energy and to introduce it? First of all, the political will is needed. So I will talk about Lithuania in particular. So here you can see a diagram. To the left from this gray line, you can see figures, how much energy was produced from the renewable sources, and you can see the years. And hydro energy depends also on the water level in our rivers. Then you can see wind energy, biological fuel and waste, refinery. And on top, you can see which is our strategy, which was approved back in 2018. And it says that until the year 2030, the renewable energy production should increase 3 times. So in general, the strategy is rather ambitious. As you can see, until year 2025, so-called green energy should increase and would be no less than 5 TWh. Below, it doesn't say how much exactly, but by the year 2025, it should increase by 1.2 gigawatts wind energy and up to 1 gigawatt solar energy grid. And here you can see the numbers: wind, solar, current hydro, and current biomass, biological gas, waste, and then new cogenerational. So all in all, about 5.7. So now we are planning to achieve more than forecasted in the strategy, and that's very good. So there are not too many countries in the world that would plan so ambitiously to achieve such a high percentage of renewable energy. So what are the essential issues? Is this enough? Maybe it is possible to achieve more. This is rather a political issue, which has to do with geopolitical situation in Lithuania. We have certain neighbors we do not want to import energy. So this is rather a geopolitical question. Our neighbors in the east, they are building new nuclear power plants, and that power plant is only 40 kilometers away from Vilnius. So our decision is not to use their energy. In long-term perspective, for Lithuania is to produce enough of energy ourselves and to plan that we would export energy rather than import. So far, we are producing only up to 1/3 of energy we need. And it is rather hard to achieve this energy to be imported only from the west and not from the east. And then we should produce enough for ourselves, enough that we could export rather than import. So when this first hour will come when Lithuania will produce more energy than we consume in Lithuania. Will it be in 2024, 2027? But at least this is our goal. And of course, this is again the issue of political will. Next, what will happen after the year 2025? Now that every work is important to lay foundation which can be used in the new term of new political government. And of course, it depends on investments. We have to wait for investors to foresee. So it can happen that one government will complete the work and the next government would be the one who would formally open the production. So that's why it is important what is next after the year 2025 and not just to think about what's until then. So by 2025 there should be built plans so that Lithuania would become exporting country. And how can we achieve that? Be specific measurement plan, action plan, which would foresee the best ways to include different interests, interest of community, interest of producers, interest of companies, and so on. And here's particular plan. Probably I will not go too much into details, but just let's look at the last point, which has to deal with community, whether it would be city or countryside. And here's a plan which is provided for the government, also for major producers. So we should probably plan for separate auctions for wind, solar, biomass, and other plants, stations. So it is also probably it is also important for people to understand, to see separate auctions for productions plus batteries. Should also provide an opportunity to buy electricity produced in market environment in the renewable energy resources and without paying a services of public interest. It is also important to see the current grid, which provides for changes of calculation methodology, when we could evaluate wind and solar a synchronicity. So it is. So if one should stop, for instance, solar or wind electricity, nothing would really occur. You can see also wind. There's also the areas how to resolve the situations that radars wouldn't interfere. We could increase the area where and decrease the areas where wind energy is limited. You should also see certain limits, determine certain limits from the protected areas. So we would have fair game and everyone would see where the limits, where the protected areas, and they wouldn't interfere into the expansion of wind and solar plants, stations. So it will be optimal for the Ministry of Energy to provide the map where these plants, stations could be placed, and we hope it will work. Now concerning laws, we say we should see the law for special land use conditions. So it see certain areas where one shouldn't receive a permission from the landowner or from the state agencies or municipality representatives. There are certain illogic things we should resolve in our legislation. Also, a person is taking a loan for building a electricity renewable plant, also for natural persons, and quite clear that people don't have enough of money in their pocket just to buy or to build a plant. So even if the state compensate, you one have to have enough of money for the initial stage of building. So it would be 7 or 8 thousand euros. So if one wants to get such amount, one has to go to the bank and ask for a loan, and then one has to prove whether he has enough of income to receive a credit from the bank. And there are a lot of such small technical interfere into the willingness of investment of natural persons to build their power plants. Is producing consumer should be provided with possibility to fix their taxes for a longer time of period, also to reduce the tax, to change the methodical change. There are a lot of things I will not go into. Also to limit the taxation, also to limit or to tax electricity from the east, and to provide an opportunity to expand community renewable electricity expansion, to enable them to expand faster. So to enable people who live in one place to cooperate among themselves in order to make it easy for them to build renewable energy. We can see that in general there are no such community renewable energy. It is important to enable the communities to build and to employ renewable energy. And we can see examples, energetics cooperatives or communities. For instance, in Germany, it is rather popular both in countryside and in the urban environment, when people can cooperate in order to expand. They use some of their own money, and then they receive support from the state, and they can produce enough of electricity for their own needs. And then they can invest the money they earn during this process in other infrastructure, like to improve the life of the community. This is the, I will try to explain the law article about the renewable energy, Article 20. What we can see here, first of all, what is the renewable community? Renewable energy community is a non-profit public enterprise, and the members of this enterprise, this company, they could use their money for the community purposes, for the general purposes. Other definition is that any community can receive a status of or receive a permission to produce electricity. They have to apply to the State Energy Regulatory Council and to receive a license or permission. And at the same time, they receive a status of renewable energy community, which is not very good, because this does not allow to receive the currently operating stations, and this is only for newly established ones. Also, concerning shareholders, both natural persons, both small and medium business subjects, because usually such shareholders, such participants, they improve the situation, they bring in their innovations, their ideas. And this is concerning like natural persons, the inhabitants living in the same municipality, which already has a electric plant, and this includes no less than 51 of all shareholders. As an example, would be Vilnius City Renewable would be too large, and different districts of the city they would rather form their own communities. And one could see what pluses would be what city can provide for these communities. Also, shareholder cannot be an owner of other energetic companies who has more than 20% of their shares. I'm not really sure if this requirement is really so necessary, because we can employ more professionals and to provide more complicated product. Also, so less administrative and warranty providing requirements when participating power plants, building auctions, when the same auctions are attended by large energy companies. For instance, if one wants to build a plant in Antakalnis, small plant, they have to compete in the same auction with a large company which has tens of years of involvement and which has hundreds of professional employees. And of course, this is just a comparison, but just to provide an example about the competition between community and large enterprises. Also, so community energy is also good because they can sell their energy for any price, and they can, for instance, shareholders who live in Antakalnis, in this particular community, they may receive electricity for free. And also, what is the flow of energy from the panel to the apartment? This is decentralized distribution. Community can also sell power in the market or for the other consumers, and the rest of the power can be used by the community itself for their own purposes. Municipalities assess and publicly on their internet website they provide information about their land areas which belong to the municipality and other places where these plants could be built, but in reality this doesn't work. So they also cannot use the remote producing consumers scheme. For instance, if someone could buy energy from different municipality, but one cannot buy energy locally from local communities. So there are some things to be fixed yet, some administrative and technical requirements are the same as for all operators of power plants. It is under State Energy Regulatory Council. So currently, they make no difference whether it is a small community renewable station or it is large plant. And of course, different employees, different levels of professionalism. And concerning if there would be community renewable energy station in Antakalnis, where shareholders could get electricity for free or will not have to pay public interest service or public interest services. So the state can allocate funds, but in practice, communities take part in the competitions and have to compete with companies and enterprises. So the last example was when 10 millions of euros was allocated, but small communities had to compete in the same competition with large companies. So if you can take a look at that allocation, no small community received this their share of money. So it seems that communities in reality cannot use cannot compete with large companies. So to summarize, you can see the system isn't really working. So this is formal thing, but so we should try to fix things that doesn't work and to provide them with opportunities to work and to create things that could work. Could be solar, wind, or like big companies, they can hire enough resource. So we should also apply to politicians and another specialist and to prove what is useful for the community and for the country. And small communities usually do not have people who could explain their needs, who could do a lobby. So I would welcome proposals. You can apply, you can contact me, and you should contact municipality and try to explain how the tool should work. There should also be competitive conditions. So the communities should take part in different auctions, so they could compete with other small entities and not with large companies. So communities would compete among themselves and not with large companies. There should be an opportunity provided for communities to get involved into competition. Like if I come to Antakalnis community and I could explain why it is useful for them to be shareholders of this community renewable energy project. And this is one of the ways communities could contribute, could join this and energy initiatives. So it would be very important that communities would get involved. This would be very useful for the community as a whole. And members of the community would benefit. They would have to pay less of electricity. They could have a better community, and they would increase the public involvement in the community. So this is my kind of commercial proposal. Take this opportunity, contact me, and let us cooperate. And maybe Antakalnis will be the very first community which can use this instrument of European Union, which is provided. So this would be right to do. And thank you for your attention. And please prepare to take part. So thank you, Martynas. We could probably call it pilot project, including the Ministry of Energetics, Ministry Energy. And maybe this would also help to foster this process. Of course, for people who do not deal with such information, it will take some time to digest it. And now let us move to Finland, because like renewable energy is already a reality, solar plants and so on. So now our guest, Jane Kapileto from Finland, tell about renewable sources, and he will emphasize that it is fun to produce energy.
Okay, how I hope you can hear me. So just a quick comment on the previous presentation about the same kind of challenges that we actually have also in Finland. Also about two-thirds of the energy consumed in Finland is imported. But a major difference is that we have this thing called the Nordic energy system. Means that there's a lot of hydro in Sweden and especially in Norway. And always when we talk about independence in the energy, we basically talk about Nordic countries. Finland, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. And the grid connections between these countries is very good. Second point to the previous presentation is about the basic fact that the best kind of energy is the energy which was never produced. And I guess that about 1/3 of the energy consumed in Lithuania is used in buildings for heating the buildings and also heating, for example, the water which is consumed in buildings. And this especially is a place of consumption where there's high potential for using energy efficiency, like insulation materials and also taking just care of the buildings. But all of this, I would my presentation is totally different compared to the previous one, because my basic message is that the technology is out there already. There isn't almost any need for major inventions. It's one, but what is needed is change of people's thinking, and I would start it from small things, just regular people, and there's a major need for change in how energy is consumed, how the whole thing is figured out. Yes, I'm an inventor, author, serial entrepreneur, and currently also a host in a TV show called how would you translate it? It's the Mighty Machines. Mighty Machines, which will solve the climate change. It's a TV show running in Finland and maybe soon also in other countries. Let's go forward. Okay, important stuff. Renewables and non-renewables. As we have, this is an example of biomass used. We have a closed system, and the name of the system is called Earth, and that's why linear processes are not available forever, meaning basically non-renewable energy. And the long-term solution most likely is renewables and solar energy and other forms of renewables which come from solar are the interesting ones. If you put the use of fossil fuels in a time scale from year 0 to 4000, it's very clear that the use of fossil fuels is a very short period of time in mankind's history. It mostly wasn't used before, and it's not going to be used in the future either. Just choosing one of these red dots and making that full of effective solar systems, that would give the all energy needed by the mankind. Of course, it's not done this way. It's done with small bits and pieces. Integrating solar into buildings is handy from many points of view. One being the ownership. The one who needs energy can own one part of the energy system. The second point is that it's close to the consumption. The production is close to the consumption. And the third point is that the building roofs are really handy for using solar panels, for example. We've had buildings quite a long time. Depending how do you look at it, but 5,000 years or 500,000 years, we've had some kind of buildings. And until now, the system has been so that the buildings will use energy from a gas pipe, from electricity. We take energy using horse chariots to the house, anything. And the money goes to the other direction. Always the same thing. Buildings consume, and the consumer is paying for that. Now, with this energy revolution that we are going, which is going now, this can change. The building owner can own some part of the energy system which is producing the electricity. And as photovoltaics, meaning solar panels, it has become kind of the starting point of this energy revolution, but it's not the only one. But one interesting fact on solar electricity, solar panels, is that it's scalable. It can be really small or it can be huge. And this is different. This is not so common in forms of energy. A small one can be a bag having solar panels, and a big one is a solar panel field which is producing electricity also to be consumed outside the area where the panel system really is, like producing it to the Nordic electricity grid, for example. Electric cars and heat pumps are also some of the important technology points which we are now facing with this energy revolution. Electric cars are very interesting because it makes the solar panels more feasible. The batteries, it's fairly same to the batteries which are in an electric car, that when it is charged. A regular car is sitting on the parking field 97% of the time. So it's almost the same when is it charged. And obviously it's good to charge it when there are renewable energy available. Then I have some videos on this presentation. Let's see how does it work. Okay, I think that energy needs to be fun, and wait. So the technology aspects, the technology is there already. But just regular people and politicians, they need to be excited about energy. They can make right kind of choices. We need to demand more and faster from the political side that we would go into full renewable energy system. Here are just some examples how I've been trying to do that. This was an example of a photovoltaic system built in a school, and the students actually did this. There are something like 20 schools in Finland where there's this kind of similar system where the students can charge their mobiles and learn about use of photovoltaic power. This is the second phase system. This is a learning environment designed by me. About 500 schools have this kind of system now, and this is a device where you can produce, use, measure, and store electricity. With solar panels, there is also a pedaling system where students can produce electricity using a hand crank. And some of these units we have also been exporting, like to Uganda and Tanzania, as a learning system. This is an event where people were pedaling electricity for a band gig. This is a musician called Jukka Poika in Finland, plays nice reggae music, and the audience was excited about this show because they had to pedal some electricity in this musician able to give out the presentation, the band gig. This is a picture from Uganda. It's a school operated by the United Nations. I was there teaching students about photovoltaic power, and after that, they were able to build this solar panel system into the school, and then they got power to computers and so on. And this is also the idea is that they built it after the course. Well, this is I have experience in sailing from Helsinki to Tallinn with different devices. I did it 3 times. First using a sauna built by me with solar panels. Then a hot tub with actor Ville Haapasalo, who is a friend of mine. And then after that, also using a fully electric boat, which has solar panels on the roof. 1.6 kilowatts of power was enough to move this vessel from Helsinki to Tallinn, which is about 90 kilometers. During winter time, I have this challenging hobby that I build ice carousels. And the idea in these ice carousels is that I try to remind people that let's take care of this climate change issue so that we can build ice carousels also in the future. And the most typical way to rotate this kind of an ice carousel is using electricity and solar power. So what can you do? Using solar power in a building is very simple. Just just having solar panels and inverter connected to the utility board, and that's it. We have a long background in Finland using photovoltaic power. We have about 80,000 summer cottages using solar power, and those were built starting from the 80s. And in other residential use, the capacity is currently doubled every year. So this is a so major change in considering an energy system. It's very conservative. Changes happen really slow, but this energy revolution, which is going now, this is amazingly fast. Solar power is also usable in the north. 1 kilowatt of installed capacity will give something about 800-900 kilowatt hours during a year. And how feasible, how economically viable that it needs to be compared to the electricity price offered by the grid. And for example, in Finland, when substituting grid power, which is bought from the grid, so photovoltaic power is already economically viable without any extra benefits. So it's built currently according to the market, like wind power also. I'm also a former wind energy entrepreneur, and about 10 years ago it was totally impossible to believe that the wind power would be built just using the market powers during this year. And actually all wind power built in Finland last year, it was built without any subsidies, or it doesn't need a feed-in tariff system anymore. So the price has dropped so much. But yes, solar power is also usable here in the north, and there's a graph on the right below that how does it vary during the year. The 3 summer months will give the most amount of production, and a good rule of thumb is that the 3 winter months give something about 3% of the production compared to the summer months. This is the starting point of solar power. A typical solar panel is about 1 meter times 1.7 meters. So about 300 watts is one panel, and technical lifetime more than 25 years. And the price for this kind of solar panel is about 100 euros. So it's not a price issue anymore. It doesn't have any moving parts, which is great, and usable in buildings of all sizes. This is the Finland's first PV system in a residential apartment building. This was built by me in Herttoniemi, Helsinki. 14 solar panels connected to just one apartment. And in an apartment buildings, solar panel, using solar panel is very new, as this was the first one in 2014. And here is the first system ordered by a housing company. This is an apartment building, but meaning that the housing company is the company who is operating this whole apartment building. And this is actually one of the main businesses that I deal currently. I'm one of the owners in Solarvoima Corporation, which has built about 1,000 solar panel systems in Finland. This is one example. This is a system in Pasila, Helsinki, in the very center of Helsinki. And how does these calculations are done? How these calculations are done optimizing the system size? I will just shortly show about this current system, that how it's done. This is a back metering. Every one of these meters, they correspond to a electricity contract or a grid connection point. And the traditional way here on the left is that most of this is operated by the grid operator, and every apartment have their own electricity contract, and then the housing company can connect one solar panel system just for 1 meter, and the meter for housing company internal use, meaning lights and saunas and pumps and all other consumption than the apartment electricity. But this new system called back metering, which can be done in 2 ways. It can be done as a technical solution, where actually these meters are removed and new ones are installed by the housing company. And another way is that the grid operator actually does this everything in their system, so that a technical solution is not needed. I mean a physical solution. It gives the same benefits, and the benefit is that all consumption in a full apartment building, it doesn't matter if it's in an apartment or the consumption used by the housing company, all can utilize the solar panel production coming from the roof. And this makes the system size a lot bigger, and also makes it a lot more economically viable. And this is now what is interesting in apartment building solar power. This is a production profile from a general solar power plant. As you can see, the most of the production comes during the summertime. And this is an example of a consumption profile in an apartment building. These 2 figures are combined, and the answer is that what is the optimum system size so that the payback time is the lowest, or the internal rate of interest is the lowest. And on the left, there is an example of this calculation. In this calculation, it was to say that it's mostly economically viable if the system size is 8 kilowatts. And this is a system which typically is used because the people who are making their decisions whether a system should be installed or not, they would like to make it on a calculation basis. so that it's not, for example, a guess, but it needs to be calculated. But a typical answer is that 15 to 25% of yearly need can be produced from your own roof. When we have the battery system installed in buildings, then it would be roughly the double of that. And a rule of thumb is that payback time for properly sized PV system is 8 to 15 years. If someone says it's lower, then it's most likely someone really trying to sell you the system. But this is the reality: 8 to 15 years. And do not forget heat pumps, wind energy, geothermal energy, thermal imaging, and taking care of the building insulations, better insulation materials, non-fossil based vehicles like electric cars or a car using biogas, for example, sustainable biofuels, because there are also non-sustainable biofuels, energy-wise, Internet of Things devices and applications, load transfer technologies. But talking all of this in during half an hour would be a bit impossible. But just to remind that these also exist. At this point, I could take questions, or do we take questions later?
Thank you, Jan. I think we can address some of the questions during the discussion that we are planning to have right now. Also, Martinas will join us, and Darius Kvedaravičius, who is Environment Vice Minister from the Ministry of Environment in Lithuania. So I say welcome to him as well. So I think from those two presentations, we have enough food for thought to also discuss how to close this gap. The way I see it, when on one hand we heard that in Finland renewable technology is there, it's not that expensive, and it's quite easy to do. And from Martina's presentation, I would say we heard quite the opposite, that it's complicated, it's quite expensive, it's not that easy to do, and quite a bit of lobbying needs to happen to bring communities together to be able to actually implement this. So, as I mentioned, we will have this discussion in English, and it will be translated by our kind translator into Lithuanian. And I would like to begin by maybe picking up on the point that Jan made, that he said that the thing that needs to change is people's thinking and approach. If maybe you could expand on that a little bit. As I understand, then did you mean that the system is working? Basically, regulatory system is so that only communities need to use it, yes? And in order to, for this, that's what's the basis of this growth and development also in urban areas of this community-owned solar panels or renewable energy sources, yes?
We're trying to build a trend here, which extends to the political side and also to the people who are making the long-term plans. Let's take an example of a heat pump, just a regular heat pump, which is fairly extensive. In Finland, there has been about 400,000 heat pumps installed in houses. It's a terrible amount of heat pumps. I mean, in a good sense. And it has already made an extensive move to people's way of thinking that energy is something which needs to be consumed wisely. And it extends to all things that people do. When they are getting an electricity contract, when they are looking for a new house, when they are making decisions what kind of car they are going to buy, they will keep on their mind energy. And when these same people have a power of decision to make something bigger, they actually understand it. The technology is already there. It's available.
But does it mean that also the cost, the system works so that the cost is not such a big factor, which I understood Martinas, the way the system works in Lithuania, probably the attitude, the people's thinking, as well as cost, maybe not technology, is this barrier for developing this on a community level in cities as well, also by the communities, like you described.
Of course, the payback time is the basic factor how these kind of decisions are made. But as most renewables, they don't need fuel, and the payback calculations look way better if can be taken into account that no fuel is needed. But of course, sometimes you have to remind about the famous Vattenfall McKinsey report, which says basically that taking care of the climate change is so much cheaper than not taking care of the climate change. But it's a totally different thing, because the costs are going to happen now, or they are going to be happening during 25 years. So,
yes, this is the so-called, the awareness, and I think the understanding, the role the climate plays in people's minds. Martinas, do you think climate change and the future costs of climate change as a motivation to use renewable sources in Lithuania, are they similar like in Finland?
Well, so first of all, the difference between Finland and Lithuania is that they have quite a high environment taxes in Finland if we compare, and they are going to also increase it, and they make another environmental tax reform and to even increase even more. So environmental taxes in Lithuania is quite low, and the main goal of our politicians was to have as low price for energy as it is possible. So that means that the cost of external cost of pollution is not included in the cost of energy. And that means that when you invest into renewable energy by yourself, you reduce cost for society, environmental cost, but you increase expenses for yourself. And the people, and there are different people, and for some people it's okay, so they do it on the cost of themselves, on the own cost, and I call them as enthusiasts, environmental enthusiasts, but they make only less than 5% of society. Then we have about 15% of society who are investing into solar panels or electrical vehicles or heat pumps because of fashion, because it's fashionable to do that. It's a modern, and you make your looks modern in society, and some people like that, and that's okay. And the rest, 80% of people, they just do calculation if it's feasible for themselves or not. If it's not, so they prefer to use money for different reasons, not for investment into renewable energy and saving of earth. And that's, I think, the main difference between Finland and Lithuania. Actually, what is important, I look also already to Vice Minister of Environment. What is important from government is somehow to make system which equalize benefit of society to benefit of every investor. That means that investors should get a benefit from the investment who creates a benefit to society, like a reduction of CO2 cost, for example, reduction of stopping of climate change, reduction of emissions, and so on. So it's difficult to persuade people pay more for energy. So because people like pay less, and it's a difficult task for Minister of Environment and for Prime Minister to explain that why should that be done in. But you look at the wider scope, not only of your own pocket, and all those money gets back to you, but maybe not just now, but in the near future.
Or in different ways. So let's give a chance to Vice Minister to react. So you saw two pictures, one with from Finland with roofs full of solar panels, and quite, let's say, not so optimistic presentation from Martynas Nagevičius about the difficulties that renewable energy communities face when becoming reality. I don't know, maybe you have new different numbers. Do those communities exist? And we hear about a lot of ambitious plans, climate management agenda, and also, you know, these the vision that your government is painting about green, climate neutral cities. Do you have a plan how to make this reality, how to close this gap from Finnish picture that we saw and the current Lithuanian picture in terms of the role of communities contributing to producing clean energy in Lithuanian cities?
Thank you. First of all, thanks to Martynas and Tiane for very interesting presentations. I would not say that it was a revelation of some kind. The facts are discussed for some time already, but I also will not take a kind of paternal position and say that we know everything and we know what to do. Yes, public sector has to listen, to learn, and to speed up the action in this field. Martynas has mentioned a need of political will, and I believe that such will is demonstrated in strategical documents and also in the new government program. From the field I am in charge, and it is a construction and housing sector. I can mention following tasks like the first climate neutral and waste-free Lithuanian city, 30% reductions of greenhouse gases emissions in Lithuania compared to 2005. And most important project for me is a renovation wave with 1,000 renovated apartment buildings each year, and this I think shows the determination of the current government to go that green way. Of course, one thing is to declare a political will, but implementation, I think it's a journey. The journey made step by step. It needs some devotion to the goal. Regarding the renewable energy at the moment, and the question you asked, at the moment, housing sector is more user than producer. That's a fact. For now, our actions are directed more towards reducing energy consumption, and this we implement with the innovation program. We also support renewable energy generation housing sector, but the scale isn't big at the moment. And if you ask for some figures, I can give you statistics for 2019. Until then, we had 68 apartment blocks that applied for support for renewable energy generating capacities for the renovation projects. So they after the renovation they use the renewable energy sources for the apartment block needs. So this is only 68 apartment blocks when we have tens of thousands apartment blocks here in Lithuania. So the scale is minimal at the moment, of course. But I think we here in Lithuania see more and more roofs with the solar panels on it, right? And every day, in our neighborhoods, we see new projects and new installments. So I believe the trend is positive. What we program in our policies, we have quite high hopes regarding the renovation on district level. It depends which term you use in English, district or block level. I mean the group of apartment blocks. And this, we believe that this is the new possibilities for innovation and new possibilities for communities. And the energy communities that Martynas was mentioning, I believe also can be part of this process, because when we talk about district level renovations, we not only talk about insulating separate houses. We want to create livable and comfortable environments for the communities that live in this district. So this also can probably be related with some decentralization of communal heating, because here we come also to quite hot discussion which way we should go. Should we invest in communal heating, or should we accept decentralization as a right path? But we see that in these district level renovation projects, partial decentralization could be solution. And in our pilot projects, we could try and make an experiment and see what results we will get. I mean that this apartment block group could have one let's say heat pump, which would be powered by solar panels, and they would produce all the energy they need for themselves. That would be experiment. That would be interesting experiment, and we would like to see the results. So probably, and if Martynas will encourage your community to become first energy community, probably you will make a step further and take part in our pilot project too.
I think Martynas already expressed his willingness maybe to take part in this. I wanted to ask Jane, those project examples that you showed during your presentation, are these also community-owned and community-managed projects of renewable energy generation? I believe online we had one question during Martynas' presentation about the relationship between those renewable energy community companies and bigger companies who are already now at the moment dominating Lithuanian market. There was a question, are these community-owned companies, they are maybe discouraged or are not as popular in Lithuania because they would be in some way in competition with those bigger companies. So are there tensions there? How does it work in Finland? And maybe Martynas can comment on the competition also aspect later.
Yes, this is an important aspect of this energy revolution. But however, it's not a problem at least in Finland. The playground is free. We had a lot of slowing factors like 10 years ago in regulation and building regulation and so on, legal processes. But currently it's very easy. It's fairly open to, for example, this back metering system. Before it existed, the housing companies could not easily do it, but now actually the grid operators, the companies who own the national grid in 75 pieces actually, they offer it as a service. So it shows about what kind of cooperation is happening between energy users and the grid operators. But most of these projects which I showed, most of them are actually energy producer point of view, started from the energy consumer point of view. But also energy companies are actively searching for models how they can build a partnership with the energy consumer, so that they would not be changing their energy provider right away. Because in general, actually selling electricity, it's not very profitable. And it can be made a bit profitable if you can do a long-term partnership with the energy user. And that's what these kind of cooperation figures are interesting for energy sellers, at least in Finland.
Mm-hmm. Martinas, is this competition a problem, a question, an issue slowing down maybe the emergence of these energy producing communities?
So when we are talking about green energy revolution, it's not about greening of electricity production, because if we would talk only about the greening, then we have only to construct 1 gigawatt capacity huge solar plant somewhere and 2 gigawatts offshore wind power plant somewhere. And because of economy of scale, it will be a cheapest solution probably, and supply electricity to every passive consumer as it was before. But the green revolution mean also democratization of energy system. That means that instead of 3 owners of energy system, we will have 1 million owners of energy system. So it means that every consumer will become every second consumer will become prosumer, and they will have a possibility to invest into energy system, and every society in village could invest in own small wind power plant or in own small biogas power plant, but that will be more expensive, and it's not possible to compete this huge project just in the market. But government actually would like to have this democratization. That means that government have to make motivation for small consumers to invest, and that motivation should be higher than the motivation for large energy companies. Then we need regulation anyway, so from the government, and because if we do not do any government regulation in this field, so the small investor will always lose in competition with large investor. just because of experience, because of economy of scale, because of knowledge, and because of a lot of reasons. So that's we have to solve somehow.
Mr. Kvedaravičius, can you name any examples in terms of what is in your government's plans to make it easier for smaller communities to become clean energy producers, to remove some of those barriers that Martynas mentioned in his presentation?
Well, again, I would feel more comfortable answering only for myself, but I'm afraid.
But do you recognize
yes,
some
yes.
of those problems as problems, in fact, for the explanations why we do not have these energy producing renewable energy communities, even though legally they can exist, I understand, for a year already in Lithuania, but there are none. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, what I hear is a discussion on this topic, and the discussion is going on. And from our side, we support, as I mentioned, we have support scheme for housing communities to install some capacities of renewable energy during the renovation processes. So we support by 30% financial incentive installment of renewable energy capacities. So there is some very clear instrument. Do we need more? Why not? Of course, we have quite high tasks of climate change, of resisting climate change, and I think every help is needed, and every help is welcomed. And yes, I can only agree, and we from Ministry of Environment have proposed some measures. We proposed some taxation policies to encourage the transition to renewables, and to make extensive use of energy more expensive. But we also have to understand that yes, this is the way to create a support system, incentive system from the government. But the real transition, I believe, maybe I'm wrong here, but I believe that the real transition will happen when we will offer a practical motives for the users, right? Well, it's very easy. Martynas mentioned also three groups of users who turn to renewable energy, and he mentioned one group that is making that out of practical reasons, because it pays off, and that's the strongest motivation. So here the technology can help, of course. What Jana mentioned, solar panels, for example, become cheaper and cheaper, and it's very strong motivation to install them. But public policies, yes, they have to be there, and there's room for us to change, to encourage this transition to renewable energy. What Martynas says, democratization, I'm not sure about this. It's not my field of expertise, so I would not comment on that. Probably yes, from my point of view as a citizen or as a house owner, yes, I'm here, I'm on the boat. But from the point of view of public sector, I'm not capable to make a real comment here.
Right. Well, let's turn to where experience exists. Jana, could you comment on maybe two things? One is the main motivation of communities to get engaged in this and do this. You mentioned this fun aspect in your presentation very much, and I understand that this understanding of technicalities of energy, how it works, and this community building level starts from schools, even in Finland. But also, how can communities prepare what technical steps they need to take in terms of, I imagine there needs to be someone with quite a bit of technical knowledge and willingness to get into this. Yes, there's some management skills involved, managing financial and technological aspects of such project, even on a building level, where to begin, so to say. What's your best practice example from Finland?
The starting point are economical reasons. The second point is utilizing good investments as visibility in media, for example. And then when going to smaller level, the neighbor aspect is very important. That having a wise energy system, it needs to be bigger and better than the neighbor has. But Martinas was actually talking about small investors and big investors, and I would like to point out one thing why the small investors are in a fairly good situation actually. When energy consumer is buying electricity, he's paying for the energy, transport fee, taxes, which include the VAT and also the electricity tax. So 4 things. You're actually paying 4 things when buying electricity. When you're using the energy produced by yourself, let's say a photovoltaic system, solar panels, or a wind turbine, anything, and you are not buying it from the grid, you can actually set up quite high price for the electricity, because if you were paying it, taking it from the grid, it would be these 4 things which I mentioned, about 15 to 20 cents per kilowatt hour. But if a big investor does a huge photovoltaic plant or a wind energy plant and is selling the electricity out, not using it by himself, but selling it out, for example, into the Nordic grid system, for example, then it's only 2 to 6 cents per kilowatt hour, depending on the time schedule when it is producing. So this is actually a good point, because it makes these small investors, just a single house, for example, it makes it so much better from economical point of view. So going from centralized system to decentralized system, this has already this is a really good thing, which is already built inside our system, because we have this transport fee and grid selling electricity and transporting electricity. Those are separated, and it's a good thing when going into this new model called the energy revolution.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Martinas, does it work like this already in Lithuania as well?
Yes. In theory, it should work, but the prices of those 4 components is set by government. For example, if you have a solar power plant in your community, and you want to transmit electricity from your community solar power plant to your house, which just stays 200 meters apart, then you have to pay for this 200 meters the same price in Lithuania as you would pay for 1,000 kilometers transporting electricity from Helsinki to Lithuania. And that's a regulation. And then I'm talking about a fair regulation for small consumers, and to change the regulation. So it's because if a regulation would be fair, so that would work. I would agree with that, with you. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Yanni. Yes.
One in this kind of situations, one way how to tackle it is the kind of extend I showed the back metering image, just extending it a bit. We have several plots, several buildings, and we would like to use electricity on some plot and position for doing productive, let's say a solar power plant or wind or anything can be on other plot. Then the way would be to build an internal grid to several plots and having only one grid connection point which is visible to the grid operator side. Then it doesn't matter what are you doing inside the grid.
But it's again in Lithuania, if you want to invest into the local power line, first of all, you have to get a permission of network company that they should tell that they are not able to do them by themselves. And they always can do that by yourself, and we will never give you the permission to put another line without them. So, and that's again regulation. And therefore I'm talking about changing of regulation, which is very important when we're talking about energy sector.
Yeah, there's one difference between Lithuania and Finland.
But we're changing always. And we are getting better and better. I'm curious about that. Yeah.
So, and as I understand that also in terms of economics of it, even though the time scale of payback that I think Martina described and Janne described looked similar, but I understand that this taxation still is there is taxation difference, yes, between Lithuania and Finland, and also these other regulatory differences that prevent from smaller communities joining in, yes?
I would tell that if solar power plants, local solar power plants, is profitable in Finland, so it should be even more profitable in Lithuania, just because of we have a little bit more solar than Finland has.
Yes, and the total price of grid power is roughly the same.
So in the bigger scale, we talked about the fact Janne mentioned, I think very important thing is that one thing is that the best energy is the energy never produced. That highlights the importance of saving energy, and probably there is no point of installing a solar panels on your roof if your house is not insulated properly. I guess it has to be systemically, should make sense like that. And I think we have work to do in this area in Lithuania, but also how important do you think is both on individual level and also a systemic level to have this perspective of what's ahead of us in terms of climate change, adaptation, resilience building of communities? Like, how important is for us to think about energy also from that perspective, and how much that would work as a motivation for communities to fight bureaucracy, for, I don't know, government to respond to communities' concerns in more general way?
We have done it mostly from building, we're using building regulations. When building a new house or fixing an old one, there's a certain class that you need to achieve from the energy point of view. And if you don't, then you don't get a permission to build the house or fix it. As simple as that.
Mr. Kvedaravičius, how is the situation in Lithuania in that perspective? You mentioned importance of renovation, yes?
It's almost the same, but almost again. we still can learn from our Finnish colleagues. If you want to build a house, yes, for example, from the 1st of January this year, the house should comply with A++ energy class. So it's we are coming near to zero energy consumption house. Then if you're renovating house and you apply for the financial support scheme, then yes, you also have to achieve a certain level of energy efficiency. Otherwise, you will not get the incentive. If you and the only difference is that if you reconstruct or fix your house from your own means, there is no obligation to reach certain energy effectivity class. So that's the only difference as I hear from Finland. I also can shortly react to what Jana said about the competition between communities, and now we are starting to construct the scheme of competition to become this, as I mentioned, become this climate neutral city. So we hope that few cities will join this competition, and we plan it to make it as in form of competition. So there would be also possibilities to compete in use of renewable energy, probably on the city level, but also on the smaller scale too.
Well, I imagine that without solving those complications that Martinas listed so extensively in his presentation, probably smaller scale communities will not be able to join. So can we, just to sum up, emphasize once again, what is important and who needs to do what in order for communities to become not to be only energy consumers, but also to become clean energy producers? What important steps government has to make, and communities themselves, what they have to make and how, so that in order the system works and that this democratization of energy system happens. Yes, Jana, please, if you could start.
Funding for pilot projects. It's always easy and understandable to fund pilot projects. And the good thing is that after doing a pilot, it's very interesting to see what works, what doesn't work, and then also to get the understanding and the agreement for scaling up the solutions. And when doing a pilot, it's a good thing that usually when doing a pilot, the people who are involved with it, they tell about it, media is interested about it, there should be a report of how was it done and so on. If it's just a funded project, not a pilot, then this media aspect most likely is lost. Finland is using about 300 terawatt hours of energy during a year. About 70 terawatt hours of that is used by buildings to heating the building itself and heating water. And the Technical Research Center of Finland has calculated that about 70%, meaning about 50 terawatt hours of this energy could be saved by using better insulation materials, regulatory means when fixing old houses and so on. It's a massive amount of energy. It corresponds roughly to the same amount of energy which is used by all cars in Finland. Yeah, doing pilots, that's fairly easy, and all politicians, it's also easy to accept that hey, let's do an interesting pilot.
Are you convinced, Mr. Kvedaravičius? Pilots we will have?
100%. And as I said in the beginning, yes, the pilots will be the first thing that we are planning to do.
And Martinas is on board. So should we have a commitment on record that we will have a successful pilot starting when? What is realistic? Who needs to do what?
Maybe I could add that everybody of us have to do their own job. So the initiative people have to organize pilot projects. Lobbyists have to persuade politicians to make a good change of regulation in a good way. The politicians should create a good regulation. Journalists have to persuade people to support green politicians, and people have to teach kids what is important and what is not so.
Okay, I think that sounds like a good point, optimistic point to sum up, to end our discussion. So thank you everyone for joining. Janė Kepulehto from Finland, inventor and engineer. Martinas Nagevičius, Renewable Energy Producers Confederation in Lithuania, and the Ministry of Environment of Lithuania, Vice Minister Darius Kvedaravičius. Thank you for being here with us in this first, as I understand, of events of local community center Miesto Laboratorija here in Vilnius, and also Nordic Council of Ministers office in Lithuania. I was Vaida Pilibaitytė. Thank you for joining us, and join us in other events. Thank you very much for everyone who was with us. And once again, I wish you all a hopeful and optimistic Earth Day, which happens to be today. So thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.